favour of having confidence in Boris Johnson as leader was 211 votes, and the vote against was 148 votes. And therefore, I can announce that the Parliamentary Party does have confidence.
And there, you hear it right there. We've got the results in. 211 lawmakers voting in favour. They do have confidence in Boris Johnson's leadership. 148, however, saying they do not. Let's go now to London. And our correspondent, Charlotte Chilson-Pill, she is standing by live there. Charlotte, let me just go to you right now. Talk us through these numbers here. 211 yes, 148 no.
Absolutely, those results just breaking now. I apologise first off if you can hear some background noise behind me at the moment. There are some protesters here. You might hear them throughout this. Yes, the numbers, this was fairly pretty close. This will certainly be very bruising for the Prime Minister. There'd been so much talk ahead of this vote about the fact that even if he did survive, the question would be by what margin and what would that mean going forward. And I think we now have our answer, that this could be very damaging for him. It could mean that you have more questions from members of his own party. I think that's what these numbers certainly indicate, that this isn't going to go away. This Partygate scandal, this scandal that essentially is one of the key factors in triggering this vote, this assertion that those who are making the laws, the Prime Minister himself, broke the laws around the COVID restrictions, that this will continue to dog him into the future. I think that this certainly means that there will be big questions going forward, although I think it really must be stated very clearly that if there's one thing we know about the Prime Minister, he's very unlikely to resign. He will continue to go forwards, but with this vote hanging over his head.
I mean, he does have a reputation of being able to go from one crisis to the next, seemingly made of Teflon, but this definitely gets through the Teflon. I mean, 148 voting against him. I mean, they would have needed 181 for this no confidence vote to have gone through. I mean, this margin is really, it is shocking in a way. Are we looking at a Boris Johnson Prime Minister after this announcement being mortally wounded in his political power?
Well, there are indeed even members of his own party who've suggested that just the very nature of holding a vote like this would result in him being mortally wounded. They've referenced past precedents of other prime ministers who face these no confidence votes, who've left for various reasons a short time afterwards. The most recent example being the former Prime Minister Theresa May, who won the confidence vote, then resigned within, left office within months. Now you have this very close result for the Prime Minister. It could indeed really see that he is, as you say, potentially mortally wounded going forward.
And Alex, let's put this in context for us. We haven't even had this tenure of Boris Johnson 3 years yet, but he was elected on an unprecedented Conservative victory, the largest in decades. And now we're looking at this confidence vote that he survived, but the numbers are not impressive.
No, I mean, I'm just picking up on those numbers. Charlotte, they're talking about Theresa May. I mean, Theresa May had 133 Tory MPs vote against her, so Boris Johnson's just had 148
right.
Conservative MPs vote against him. So that's 41% of his own party have voted against him. That is not good for the Prime Minister. I think anything was going to be bad for him, however you spin it. Anything over 100 was going to be bad. 148 is very bad. And it's as you said, he won a victory, a huge victory. He had an 80-seat majority back in 2019, and it's like he has squandered that majority, that he has managed to turn 41% of his own party against him, wanting him to step down as Prime Minister.
So what does he do moving forward now? I mean, if he knows that he doesn't have the legitimacy in the eyes of these 41% of his own conservatives, what can he do? Call early elections and say, yeah, let's find out if the will of the people is still behind.
Well, I wouldn't put it past him, and he did change the rules over when you could have an election just a few months ago, because it should be not for another 2 years. So he could do that. However, he also knows, and the people behind him crunching the numbers know, that he is not popular out there. And they've got two by-elections, so two local elections coming up in June, and they are very worried that they could lose both of those, making the situation even worse. So I think for him to go to the polls and call a general election would be a very dangerous idea.
But he's a liability now to many of these MPs who have to face these local elections coming up.
Well, that's what many of them are feeling, which is why they have turned out and voted tonight. And interesting, you know, that was a secret ballot, so we don't know who voted for what. But looking at the numbers before, there were more MPs who had said they had voted for Boris Johnson tonight, according to some of the agencies like Reuters, than have actually voted for him. So I think, you know, we don't know the exact numbers. We don't know we don't know exactly who has voted and who hasn't. But remember, people can say, I support Boris Johnson, and then in a secret ballot can do something completely different.
Well, I mean, you know, you've covered Westminster for a long time. So talk us through what's Labour thinking right now, but what are they also thinking in the Conservative Party? Is there an obvious person, a rival to Boris Johnson in the party who would like to replace him?
OK, so to your first question, Labour, this is the best result they could actually ask for. They want Boris Johnson to stay so that they can go into that election and all the way through say, you can't trust this man. He broke the law, he was fined by the police, and he has misled Parliament. For who could stand against Boris Johnson? Of course, there are a number of MPs who have been vying for that position. Only one has properly come forward as somebody who has criticised him today. That's Jeremy Hunt. He stood against Boris Johnson in 2019 for that leadership election. And he is, again, would be somebody who's very likely to throw his hat into the ring. However, that vacancy at the moment is not open, but that is not to say it won't be opened in the next few months. One thing to add, if I can, is that under the current Conservative Party rules, there cannot be another confidence vote within the party for the Prime Minister for another 12 months. Now, there is the possibility that they could change those rules, and even the head of that particular committee, parliamentary committee, has said technically they could change the rules, so maybe something will change. But it could be now that Boris Johnson is looking fairly safe within his party for the next 12 months.
So 12 months of what, though? Is this going to be a stalemate?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, just before we run out of time, what do you expect, I'll ask you and Charlotte this, what do you expect Boris Johnson to do tomorrow morning?
I think that he will probably go out, actually, onto the steps of Downing Street tonight and say, I have secured victory. We need to put this behind us. I have listened to the MPs. We're going forward. Forget it.
Yeah.
And that is what he's going to do. He's bullish, and he does not want to ever be forced out of number 10.
Let me ask Charlotte. Charlotte, what's your prediction? I mean, I'm sure Boris Johnson never thought that people would be able to say you look worse than Theresa May tonight.
No, indeed, and I'm sure that will be very, very painful for Boris Johnson. But just to echo what Alex was saying, I think what he really will be trying to do now in the coming days and weeks is essentially saying that this vote has now drawn a line underneath the scandal that's been dogging him over the last months, that it is now time to move on. It's undoubtedly, he will say, that the time now is to focus on the other priorities that are facing this country at the moment.
And Charlotte, one more question before we run out of time. We know the polls say that Boris Johnson is very unpopular, extremely unpopular in many areas. What's this vote going to do to the general mood? He was booed in public this past weekend.
He was booed at the Queen's Jubilee celebrations over the weekend. His supporters pointing out, though, that there were some cheers there as well. I mean, the fact is that this vote does indeed, as Alex alluded to a moment ago, it does essentially, according to the current rules, draw a line under this for the Prime Minister. Technically, he doesn't or can't face another vote of no confidence for a year now. So almost regardless of what voters are saying, and they have been expressing even over the last months this discontent with this scandal, this Partygate scandal and his handling of it. Essentially, there is very little that can be done now. The general election still a long while away. It will, though, still continue to dog him going forward.
Yeah, and it's looking like a hollow victory, that is for sure. Charlotte Chelson-Pill in London, Alex here in the studio. To both of you, thank you.